So welcome back to our January main event. I'm so glad to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Um, we are going to record our session here, so we'd love for you to keep your camera on and engage and talk. Feel free to use the chat or just unmute and chime in. Um, but also, if that is not comfortable for you, we will respect that as well. You can keep your cameras off. We're going to dive in with a couple quick things. Our goal and mission is to support, promote, and advocate for the arts to benefit all Missourians. And a lot of you are here because you believe in the power of arts integration. You believe in teaching through the arts, and so we're here to learn from each other and talk with each other. Um, because we know that this is something that empowers both our teachers and our students, engages our students, and it's just something fun for all of those that participate. When we talk about arts integration and arts across the curriculum, it can look a lot of different ways. It can be anything from your art instruction and your content instruction, and then being able to support both of those. But when we talk about arts integration here, we're talking about teaching both the art form and the content at the same level and equitably. So we do follow, we've got one of our Kennedy Center friends here. And so we do mimic similarly to their definition of teaching students through one or more art forms and engaging in a creative process that connects the art forms and the other subject areas, meeting evolving objectives in each. And we're going to hear today from Megan Thompson. She's an assistant principal who has been using arts integration, and we're really excited to kind of hear her journey. Before we get started with her, though, let's just kind of build that brave space where we're going to be present with each other, be open to the conversation. You never know where that little nugget of information that you can take with you is going to come. And we ask that you just engage, whether that's through the chat or through unmuting and talking with us. We just would love to hear all the voices. That our goal is to have a community. So being able to work together and collaborate is part of our space here. I did let Megan know I'm going to kind of do a little reflection at the end. And so I wanted to kind of preface you guys with that. It's going to be called Color, Symbol, Image. So as you're listening today, kind of be thinking about a color that you feel captures a key idea you heard, or a symbol you think would represent something that Megan says, or even an image that comes to mind as you listen. I'm going to drop this in the chat so that we can reflect on it a little bit later. But I do want to jump right in and give Megan the floor. Megan's been teaching for 14 years, K through 5 in rural, urban, and suburban settings across northern Missouri. She's currently the assistant principal at Kellybrook Elementary for Liberty Public Schools. She's got her bachelor's degree in elementary and early childhood education and a master's degree in education leadership. Both of those from University of Central Missouri. She's implemented arts integration teaching strategies for the last 6 years at Epic Elementary and is working to bring arts integration to more classrooms in her current building. She loves working with children and believes educators must change how we serve kids in our fast-paced, ever-changing world. And she believes that arts integration is a great way to inspire and engage students in deep learning. So please help me welcome Megan. And I'm going to pass it off to you, Megan. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here and share my journey kind of with you today. And that was just kind of my goal, um, to on how we would spend our time together. Is just kind of show you like where I started as a teacher and how that grew over the last 6 years, and then kind of where I'm at as far as what does arts integration look like now that I'm an assistant principal in a building that really doesn't utilize arts integration at all. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I tried to be very visual to share several examples of, oops. Hold on. Okay. All right, that's better. So my journey, and I like Lauren said, like I've taught kindergarten, first grade, and third grade for the last 14 years in several settings across North Central Missouri. But where my arts integration journey started was when I landed at Epic Elementary in the Liberty Public School District. And I really feel like Epic is where everything took off, because the whole premise of the school is to get kids creating in whatever way possible. I mean, create is in the name Epic. So I felt like I was able to do that because the leadership in the building and above that really emphasized creating as the way kids learn. All of my training with arts integration has been through the Kennedy Center Partners in Education with Kansas and Missouri, and specifically with Focus 5, which we have Melanie Rick here today, who's a co-founder of Focus 5. And so happy to have her on here as well, but have received numerous trainings through them, which has really driven my journey in arts integration. So one of the very first strategies that I learned with arts integration was Tableau, which is just an opportunity for kids to move, but also just be thinking, sharing, planning, and creating an idea. So obviously it was a structure that they had to first learn. What does it look like when we're thinking? How do we share ideas in a cooperative way where everyone's voice is heard? What does planning look like? And then creating. So I put a couple of examples up here. But like the top one, I believe they were doing something that might have happened on the Lewis and Clark expedition. I think they're in a canoe with a couple people and someone being the oar there. And then the bottom one was they were retelling the night before Christmas. So I think we have Santa Claus and some reindeer in the sleigh on the bottom one. But obviously, gets kids thinking. The top one was an easy assessment piece for me. We had talked about Lewis and Clark the day before, so that was a quick recap on what do they remember from it, what was on the journey there. And then on the bottom one was picking out a retelling piece to go along with it. So Tableau was one of the strategies that I have used frequently. The second one that I used was reading art as text. And this one is actually probably one of my all-time favorite strategies in arts integration to use. And one of the main reasons why I liked doing this, because it was an access point for every student in my classroom to understand what we were learning about. So even if they weren't the best reader or couldn't read at all, they could learn how to infer and make connections and question and synthesize and do all of those reading things that we want them to be able to do with a picture. So, and eventually my thought was, if they can do it with a picture, then eventually, hopefully we can get them to do it with text also. The components of reading art as text is when they're looking at art, that they're specifically looking at the facial expressions of the people in the art. They're looking at the focal point of where the people are looking, the gestures that the people are using, what clothing they're wearing, what the setting of the art is, the objects in the art, quantities, size, and color. And then obviously after they're spending time looking at art, that they're also talking about art and thinking about the art. And that's where they really get into more of those inferential pieces. And we're hopefully going to get, if we have time at the end, have time to actually do one of these together so you can experience what that might look like if you haven't had the opportunity yet so far. One of my other art strategies or engagement pieces that we used was using paper sculpture. So this was actually an example of my students' like first tries using paper sculpture. And we really just let them be organic and learning the different ways that we can fold and twist and really put pieces of paper on paper to create a paper sculpture, and then we put them all together just to form the letters for our school. But this was just their practice piece in playing with paper sculpture, and then we really utilized paper sculpture as a form for creating other artwork that was more content related using paper sculpture. So I have a few examples for you here. A lot of times you might hear me say we as I'm going. That is because I also at Epic, if you're unfamiliar, they are co-taught classrooms, so 2 teachers and 50 students. So all of this was done with 50 students at a time with 2 teachers in the classroom. So here are just a few examples of using paper sculpture. We did a like miniatures museum for a project, and so they had to use paper foldings to create tools or objects that, again, Lewis and Clark might have used on the Core of Discovery. So I really feel like in playing with paper, even organically, and in this one, it really helped them, like learning how to fold paper and glue paper and that sort of thing, help them with these next projects I'm getting ready to show you. This one was using paper and cardboard to create shadow boxes. So one of the standards in Missouri for 3rd grade is Famous Missourians. So rather than just research and write about it, they had to create a shadow box to demonstrate that person's life and why they're famous and the contributions they made to our world. And that those were pretty much all the objects in there are made from either paper or cardboard. If they printed something out, then we tried to have them learn how to make like bump outs and pop outs to really make like people come to life or those sort of things. And then one of the other things that we utilized was shadow puppetry. And the kids absolutely loved this one. I feel like it was something that was very new to a lot of them. But we used it a lot for storytelling, retelling. It was great to have students write their own stories and then create the characters for retelling the story. And obviously, like just looking at this picture, like the number one thing I always think of is the kids behind the screens. Obviously, the cooperation, the listening, the creativity, the right, like so many skills go into being behind the screen, but then also the kids in front of the screen. They also have to learn to be an audience member too. So that's one of the great things of the strategies that I've learned from arts integration is it's not just teaching the art form or the content, but it's also teaching like performance skills or audience skills and just giving kids multiple opportunities to practice those things. And I feel like especially since COVID, we noticed when students came back, like they didn't know how to set in an assembly anymore. Like they really struggled being somewhere with a performance. And so giving kids just numerous practice for this in their classroom through really fun ways, this really provided them that practice. And they just enjoy listening to their peers' stories and seeing the creativity happen. Also a great opportunity for students to give feedback to their peers. So what did they love that the artist did, the puppeteers did in the story? What could they have done to be better next time? And kids really listened to that feedback, or sometimes they would notice things in one person's and then they gave that a try in theirs when it became their turn. So just so many opportunities for learning in multiple ways. I included this next one, these next examples, just because it was a big part of our classroom, and that was photography. So we tried to get outside whenever possible and just capture beauty and give students an opportunity to learn different photography techniques and learn about the rule of thirds and learn how to use filters, um, and just to capture unique moments that they found. And so I'm going to show you just a few examples of what we used. Um, but obviously this wasn't extremely content driven, other than we did have a classroom garden, and a lot of our learning involved work around our classroom garden. So this captured a lot of storytelling through our classroom garden. Um, but here are just like a few examples, and these are all student pictures that they took. These were third graders. Obviously, this last one they were working on using filters. And then this one, which I think is pretty amazing, like with 50 kids outside, that they were able to capture life on these flowers without scaring them away. Obviously, like also just like teaching life cycles. So we were learning about different life cycles, able to capture that and then to put that into some form of digital art to really show life cycles. So those were several of the different strategies and art forms that I use to embed content in in my classroom and into the curriculum. And I really feel like, you know, when creating is a daily habit, it just becomes very routine. So I didn't see myself as an artist like as a child or growing up. Like drawing was not my thing. I still specifically remember my 8th grade art elective teacher telling me, like, I'm not sure that art is for you. I still distinctly remember that conversation. And so moving to a school where creativity and art was the emphasis was a little bit daunting to me. And these strategies that I used really gave me the tools as a teacher to show kids how to do it. And it also showed them that, like, it doesn't have to be perfect every time. And sometimes Tableau is not even gonna look that close. Sometimes these kids would create something and you would look at it and be like, what is that? And then through their explanation, you could start to see, like, oh, you were this piece and that piece. And so I think it gave me a lot of great opportunities for kids to know, like, it doesn't have to be perfect every time. It's not really about what it looks like necessarily in the end, but just like what you learned as you were going through the process. So after I'm going to show you an example of how we took like all of these different art forms that I've shown you, and we put them into a documentary. So I previously mentioned that one year the students did like a mini museum, and then the year we did COVID, the year we were shut down for COVID, we had to come up with Plan B. So what could they do from home where they could still showcase their learning, but that they could do independently, and then maybe we could merge it all together for a great showcase. So we knew that because we had taught the different strategies and learning techniques all year long, that they knew how to use the art tools, and that if we were able to kind of break up Missouri history into chunks, that they could work in teams to create a documentary and then download and upload to create a really beautiful story. So with 50 kids, we were able to create a 30-minute documentary from home during COVID. And they were able to learn a lot. So I'm going to show you a few pieces from that. And at the end, I can provide the link if you actually want to go and see what that looked like. I took a few snapshots from the video to show, but if you want to watch it and see what it really looked like, I'm happy to provide that link. So here are just a few examples of art forms used to storytell. So in the top left corner right here, they use digital animation using the Keynote app. to tell the story of early European explorers. Another person that was in that same group decided to use shadow puppetry. So they created their own little shadow puppet station at home and then created shadow puppets to retell that portion of history. Another group, another student used stop motion. This was at the end, and they're talking about the Civil War and the cemeteries in Missouri of both Confederate and Union soldiers, and then also just like drawings as well. So we gave students a lot of choice in what tool they felt comfortable with to really tell that piece of history, and then we're able to meld them all together. I particularly loved this groups or store of how they were talking about westward expansion and specifically the pioneers on the Oregon Trail. And so when we think about assessing kids and what did they learn, like I could easily tell from their pictures that they knew what life was like on the Oregon Trail and that they rode in covered wagons and that sometimes covered wagons would break down and they would have major hardships and that sometimes the weather was really bad and life living on this trail was really hard. And then other times they would have to, they would circle up their wagons to keep their camp safe from Native Americans that were trying to get into camp. And also prompting a lot of discussion from that this was the perception and the point of view of the pioneers, but what was the point of view of the Native Americans during this time? So you could just gain a lot of information just simply of what they knew from looking at the pictures. And then I truly believe, kind of going back to what we were saying, that when we integrate art all the time and we're constantly thinking about utilizing art, that students start thinking of ways that they can bring art to anything that they're doing. And so one of the other projects that we did at the end of the year is we do a big water unit and learning about the global water crisis, and they have to come up with a way to raise money to build water wells. And so they came up with all of these ideas of, maybe we can do some bracelets or create greeting cards and we can sell produce from our garden and those sorts of things. And I feel like when kids are engaged in art all the time, like they just naturally start to generate ways that they can use their art skills to make some money at it. And then I just mentioned this before that we did a lot of work within our garden, but we tried to embed any sort of art form we could and creativity just in this particular goal was to just make our garden more beautiful. It was really drab and ugly before. And so they came up with ways that they could make our learning space a little bit more inviting for them. And then again, just another opportunity to include artwork in everything that they're doing is that they were needing to write an autobiography about themselves, but figuring out a unique way to create a self-portrait with their autobiography. And then lastly, one of the most important ways that really you can embed any of the strategies or examples that I've provided before just through design thinking. And later in just a few minutes, we're actually going to try to go through how using different arts integration strategies, what that might look like in design thinking. So this example is they needed to create a covered wagon. And then I was also fortunate enough to work with Kansas City Young Audiences, and they brought an artist in residence to our building and our class. That's my whole class of 50 students right there. Learned how to bucket drum, and we learned a lot about African culture and the importance of music and drumming in African culture. our incredible artist, Mr. Taylor, taught our students how to bucket drum, not just the rhythms, but we did some dancing and some call and response sing along, and it was just really powerful for the students. And then we were able to perform for our school and for parents, and that was kind of how we kicked off our water unit and our fundraiser to help build wells in Africa. So I'm going to stop, just pause briefly right there. I know I went through a lot really, really quickly. Does anybody have any questions before I move on to the next segment?
I could think of a question if you have time for one.
Yeah.
You said you had a partner teacher, and were you guys always on the same page about your approach to having kids make things to reinforce whatever they were learning?
Yeah. That was a blessing of working at Epic, is that when you applied for a job there, you went in with the mindset that creating was important and is a part of daily life, and also the understanding that when we create, it's the highest depth of knowledge, right? So when students can use creating and to show us what they've learned, that we're really accessing their deepest knowledge. And so my co-teacher was definitely on the same page as me. She didn't go to quite as many trainings as I did with Focus 5 or through the Kennedy Center, but was always very apt to like, will you show me once and then I'll be able to do it the next time. And so always just willing to jump in and learn and work together through things, which was really nice. She also student taught at an arts integration elementary school in Columbia, so she had a background in some of those things as well. But definitely that would be very challenging if my co-teacher hadn't have had that mindset of learning through creating.
Well, you're probably encountering some of those hurdles now with your transition to a school where this type of approach is not so familiar.
Definitely. Yeah. So that's a great segue into my next section. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
So I am in my first year now as assistant principal at Kellybrook Elementary, which is still also in the Liberty School District, and the teachers still have access to Focus 5 learning and learning through the Kennedy Center Partners in Education, but it hasn't been quite as big of as an emphasis in the past. And also one of the nice things I think about Epic was because everybody had that mind, you just gave it a try. And if it didn't work out the first time, it didn't mean that you quit. It was kind of like, okay, you went next door and said, okay, I gave this a try today and it didn't really work very well. What did you do? Because you really loved it. So, you know, we could really learn from each other that way, because a lot of people had gone through the trainings and were on the same page and doing the same work. And so it's a little bit more daunting when you might be the only one in your building that's doing this work. And I think I only have one teacher that has had any training. And it was several years ago that they did it. So it wasn't super current or fresh in their memory as to, you know, knowing the strategies or remembering how to implement those things as to where I'm at Kellybrook, where I am now. So one of the ways I've done this, and it's certainly not, you know, arts integration isn't the focus of the school or expected like it was in my previous building. But one of our goals for this school year was real world learning. So one of our building goals is wrapped around real world learning. And I knew that I wanted to bring much of my learning and experiences with arts integration into my building. So I thought to myself, how can I, you know, merge real world learning with arts integration? And it was very easy for me. And, you know, knowing that if I'm designing professional development for teachers, it's going to have to fit around one of our building goals. And so I was like, I think it will fit around real world learning. and that I can engage teachers in this work and then also be willing to go model these for teachers in classrooms. I knew that it was going to take work to go and do that. And so just when we think about real world learning, always just framing it around the mindset of we're going to be using our head, we're going to be thinking, bringing in academic content, but we're also going to be bringing in the empathy piece. And, you know, having kids really think through and learn empathy and think about how others might be feeling, which goes along with our social emotional learning. And then hands-on work, which is where I felt like the creativity piece could really come into play. So with this, I really brought in design thinking. So I knew that real world learning could be thought through design thinking, and that I could weave in so many arts integration strategies if I just first taught teachers design thinking. So specifically, the process being used is obviously the empathy, defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing. So the first PD session I did was I had teachers think about a chore that they really disliked doing at home. And then they shared that with a partner and were able to tell their partner why they disliked it. Their partner could really define what the problem was by asking lots of questions. And then they had to sketch out some ideas for something that they could create that would help that teacher with the chore that they hated, and then design a prototype just using paper, cardboard, you know, makerspace type of items, and then be able to test it out and share it. So once I did that with teachers, there was a lot of buy-in. I think they could see that, well, number one, it was engaging and it was fun. That it really forced kids to think about the other person, because they weren't creating something for themselves. They were creating something that would help their partner. So bringing in that empathy piece. Asking questions, which can be really, really hard for elementary students to like drill down to like what is really the problem. So like giving students extra practice and questioning to figure out what the exact problem was, and then coming up with like really wild and radical ideas for solving that problem, which is what they're going to be doing in the future. They're going to be coming up with some wild and radical ideas to solve our world's biggest problems. And then obviously just the prototyping piece. So teachers really bought into that quickly. They had fun doing it. A lot of teachers asked for more ideas. A couple of teachers asked if I would come in and like model this for their classroom so they could see what this would look like in their classroom. And I said, absolutely. And I knew that that was going to be, you know, if I could get a couple people on board with like trying this, that would be a way to kind of start weaving my way in and start bringing in some other strategies as well. So I went into a particular second grade classroom, and I wanted to make sure I was bringing in content also. So I brought in a book and I showed them 2 pictures in the book. And I first taught them the strategy of reading art as text. So I taught them the strategy of, you know, looking at the facial expression, the focal point, the gestures, their clothing, and going through that whole process of really looking at the art to understand what's going on in the picture. And I showed them these 2 pictures. I showed them this picture, and then I showed them this picture. Okay. And so after that, we were able to have a discussion and look, think, and talk about art. We went into that first piece of the design process, which was, what is the problem in the character? What do we think the problem is in this book? And then we were, and so based on reading the art, they had some ideas on what they thought the problem in this book would be. And then we read the book to see if they were right. And then they were able to really think about, what is to empathize with the character. How is this character feeling? Are they frustrated? Are they mad? Are they sad? So bringing empathy in through looking at character analysis. And then also really defining the problem. And in this book, the students thought there were really two problems. That one, he had to carry all those hats on his head. And that's a problem that they wouldn't want to have to do every day. And that the second problem in the book was that the monkeys stole all of his hats and that he really needed them back. So again, just like using that empathy piece, the defining piece, and then we would get to the ideate piece, where I just used a strategy of quick sketch. So they each had to come up with, they had to pick one of the problems, whether they were going to solve the problem of having to wear all the hats, or if they were going to solve the problem of getting the hats back from the monkeys. They had to pick one of the problems, and then they had to come up with at least 3 possible solutions for something they could create to solve the problem, either get the hats back or for him not to have to wear them on his head. And I really tried to have them focus on wild and radical, something that hadn't already been created. Because I should have prefaced this that the classroom was learning about inventions and inventors. So it's really trying to tie in content of inventions and inventors, with also bringing in some literacy content as well. And talking about, well, if it's already invented, then he probably would have maybe already had tried it and it didn't work. So to come up with something new, to come up with something wild and radical that maybe nobody ever thought of before. Because at first the kids would just say something like, well, I'm just going to get him a backpack. I'm just going to make a backpack. He can carry the hats in his backpack. It'll solve both problems, like he won't have to wear them and they won't steal them. So just really making them start to think outside of the box. Well, somebody's already invented that, and I really want you to think of something that nobody has invented yet. And then after they did their ideate by themselves, they got with a partner, decided on and shared their ideas, decided on what idea they were going to go with, and then started prototyping. Obviously, just using like the materials you see there, just general makerspace things, tubes, boxes, tape, whatever they could make. And then after they created their prototype, then they were able to test and share. This top one, they created, those yellow things are bananas. And then they created a slide. I don't think it's pictured. They created a slide. And so they thought that they would put the bananas at the bottom of the slide. The monkeys would come down the slide to the bananas and they would be able to get the hats back while they were eating the bananas. That was their invention. These are second graders, by the way. And then the other group felt like they could make a vest with clips. That way because the character is a peddler. And so that way that people could still see them and he could share them, but they would be clipped onto him. So he wouldn't have to, keep them balanced on his head and that sort of thing. So that was just an example of how I used some of the arts integration strategies with a teacher. This lesson took an hour from start to finish, teaching them the protocol for reading art as text and then going through the design process. And then I'm actually, if we have time, which would take about 10 minutes, we could go through one together. How does that sound? Sound okay? Before we go on, does anybody have any questions?
I have another question. This is Tom. Did it stick, this approach of design thinking with the teacher?
Yeah, it stuck. She's done a couple since then. And then I've also had a couple people come ask like, hey, tell me more about this, or hey, would you come into my classroom and show me how this worked? So I feel like that's been my point of entry for a lot, is just starting with one or two and really partnering with them and like modeling for them, and or just being a thought partner, and providing the opportunity, and also just saying like, give it a try. I don't care if, who cares if it doesn't go well the first time, like just give it a try, and the opportunity to know that it's okay that it might not go well the first time. I feel like has been my entry point, and some people have really taken hold of this, and are using it frequently, and other people aren't there yet, and that's okay. One at a time. So
I think it's really powerful that you're creating a space at this new school to take risks. I know when I first started, having an administrator that was like, yeah, go for it. And like, if it doesn't work, let's talk about it together and reflect together and think, so just being able to have leadership that gives you that opportunity to take a risk is really huge. So I think that's awesome. I also noticed as you were talking, especially through this design process, like how similar like Tableau even is to it, and how those steps of like coming up with a plan and working together and making compromises and all of that, and how that could help build up those skills to do the design process as well in a fun way.
yeah, I'm actually gonna, if we since we have a little bit of time to go through that, I'm actually gonna use to go through the design process, but use a few more of the arts integration strategies, including Tableau. So it's a little bit harder on Zoom, but we're gonna give it a try. All right, so we're going to first read art. And then if you have something by you where you can just do like some quick sketches, just like a little sticky note or anything, that's really all you need, is like something to sketch with. And then we're going to get started. So we're going to go through the design process. We're going to use 3 arts integration strategies, 2 that are through Focus 5 and Kennedy Center, which is reading artist text, and then Tableau. So I want you to, the first thing we're going to do is read art as text. Now I should preface this that if you're teaching reading art as text in your classroom, there are like specific lessons that you can teach your students just to learn this protocol of reading art as text. And it teaches them how to look, think, and talk about art, but specifically looking at the facial expressions, focal point, gesture, clothing, setting, objects, quantity, size, and color. And so, and it also, if you were watching me on the screen, you probably noticed like my hands were moving. It gives them a hand signal to help them remember all the different components. So I just want you to look at this photograph that I just snagged from the web, and really read the art and think about their facial expressions, the focal point, their gestures, their clothing, all of those things. And what do you notice? We can just do any just quick share outs. What do you notice?
I noticed the little boy is more frustrated than the mom is, probably because he's not getting attention.
The clothing insinuates it's a modern family.
See lots of objects spread throughout the floor chaotically, so it's making me think that's causing the frustration in their facial expressions.
Great. And so then moving on to when we think about design thinking, if we're empathizing with these people, how might they be feeling?
Overwhelmed.
The little girl looks content. She's like, I have no cares.
Yeah, and the mother looks as though she's enjoying the chaos. Or am I not seeing that correctly?
That's what I see too.
Okay.
She's like, okay.
Okay, this is what I got.
And then what might be the problem? There could be a couple problems, but let's just like pick one, like define one problem that we see in this picture.
I think got laundry to do.
That's what I noticed. It's my least favorite chore. All right, so we're gonna go with the laundry. There's laundry there, and there's clearly dirty laundry strewn all over the couch behind her too, and maybe some on the floor, let alone in the basket. So the mom might be having that grimace look on her face because there's just like so much laundry to do. So real quickly, on just any little piece of paper that you have, I want you to sketch out some ideas. Could be wild and radical. Thinking outside of the box of something that you might be able to design to help this mom with her problem of just never ending laundry.
It's hard as an adult to think of something wild and radical since you've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried to start thinking about like, okay, other things like technological that help me like around the house, and how could that ever be applicable to laundry. So I thought about like my Roomba, like my vacuum. Like, could there ever be something that was created like that that would also do my laundry? Okay. So this next part is to build a prototype. So we've empathized, we've defined, we've ideated, we're ready to build a prototype. And this time we're not going to build a prototype with, like I did in that classroom with things, we're going to build a prototype through Tableau. So you're going to use your body, or in this case on Zoom, your hands or your torso up to create something that could be a prototype for what you want to make. So Lauren, do we have time to do a breakout group for like 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lauren's gonna send us into breakout groups in a minute. And what I want you to do is I want you to go through this Tableau structure of pick one idea that you had, share it with the group. And then as a group, I want you to pick one of those ideas. And then you need to plan a Tableau. And that's just with your body, your hands, and your face, most likely in this, just for Zoom purposes. But you might use the questions of what should we make, what parts do we need, and what part am I? What part is each person? So if you're creating, something, I'm going to be the legs of the thing that I'm making, or I'm going to be the box, or whatever it is that you're making. So probably about 2 minutes to share, plan, and create it, and then we'll come back and you'll be able to share what your group made with everybody. Are there any questions before we go? I know I throw a lot at you, especially if you don't know the Tableau structure, but we're ready to give it a try. Okay, let's do it.
All right, I'm putting people in groups now.
So what ideas did you have?
I originally thought of like the Roomba too, and like some kind of robot, but then I was thinking of like self-cleaning clothes. Like they almost like like have legs or something that like after you wash it, they just like boop, 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 like magically put themselves away.
Nice. I made this.
I think you're muted, Kristen, but I was getting what you were saying.
Yeah.
Sign language,
All right, we should all be back now.
Awesome. I know that was like really, really fast to go through all of that, and not as always perfect on Zoom. But does either group want to share what they came up with?
We should do ours.
Okay. All right. Tom, are you going to talk for us? Because it was your idea. So do you want to explain?
Oh no. Well, anyway, we turned our laundry problem into a game that the kids would play. And so we decided that we needed some things for our game to make our game total. And so that's what our Tableau is. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
So I was the game board.
I'm picking up.
I'm the piece. The rest of the other two are a spinner and a lever to tell what they need to do.
And that's it. We did it.
Would
Now
the
we
other,
have to do is set it to music.
would the other group like to go? You don't have to, but I will provide the option.
No, they have to.
Yeah.
They're all part of my school. They have to go.
We chose to do Alyssa's plan. So Alyssa, let's see here. So do
Sorry,
you
I
want to
was trying
tell
to find
them
my email.
about
Yeah, so the idea was to make the laundry kind of do itself through a series of machines. And we kind of only had enough people for the first few machines. So we have a hamper, and the hamper door opens on the bottom and it falls into a laundry basket. Excuse the laundry basket. And then the laundry basket is sitting on a conveyor belt. And so the conveyor belt goes until it hits a hook on the side, which knocks it into the washing machine. And then once it's in the washing machine washes it.
So you can see like just the amount of skills students are learning from this, and especially because we know our students need to learn so many soft skills and practice those soft skills, but the concentrating on the task at hand, but like utilizing their imagination, but also just like sharing and cooperation and all of those opportunities for practice with that within design thinking. And utilizing those arts integration strategies with that. So my last ending point for you would just be to one of my favorite people in this world is Brene Brown. I think she's incredibly smart, and she always says that there's no innovation and creativity without failure, and knowing that our students are going into highly innovative careers, most likely, and where creativity will be a necessity because computers will take over everything routine. That's really important that we just provide them a lot of opportunity to innovate and create, but also to fail. So if it doesn't go well for you the first time, just keep on plugging away because eventually you'll get there. And thank you for coming today. So
Thank you so much, Megan. It was so nice to hear kind of both of your experiences being in a school that's highly active in arts integration and now being in a place where you're trying to build that pathway and build that structure there. So I have a lot of notes that I wrote down, and I'm sure many others did as well. We are not going to be able to get to the color symbol image thing that I sent you at the beginning, but I did put the PDF in the chat. So if on your own time you kind of want to reflect and process on some of the things that Megan said, feel free to kind of re-click that link and just take some time to yourself to think of some of those big ideas that you want to take with you, and a color that might match an idea, a symbol that might match that idea, or even an image. And sometimes I like to put them on little sticky notes and stick it on my computer so I can kind of go back and think about that throughout time. Next month, we have Key Griffin coming. She's on the call with us today, and she'll be back talking about the 4 P's of art. So she's going to weave together elements of art and storytelling through arts integration. So we hope if you haven't registered for February, you jump on our website and sign up for that. You can get a continuing ed certificate for your time and participation in today's workshop. So if you are interested in getting a certificate for your school, professional development learning, shoot me an email. I'll drop my email in the chat for you. And then lastly, I put in a quick survey. If you don't mind taking just 1 minute to reflect, it kind of helps us figure out, what you guys are looking for in these sessions and how we can keep building and improving the needs for you guys. So thank you so much for sticking around a few extra minutes. Megan, thanks again for sharing all your wonderful ideas and insights with us.
yeah,
And
thank you for having me. I also put my email in the chat. So if you ever have any questions or an idea, I'm always willing to email anybody. So
awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your week.